Hey guys, tonight we curl up in the dusty corners of ancient Alexandria, where incense clings to the air, reed sandals scuff down marble halls, and the queen's cat, yes, that's you, is waking up beneath a pile of perfumed linens. Your ears twitch. A servant shuffles past, carrying a bowl of dates and muttering about something the queen said in Greek. The air is warm and still, and somewhere out there, the Nile glimmers in the moonlight like spilled silver. But let's be clear, you probably wouldn't survive this version of ancient Egypt. Too many scorpions, too few bathroom breaks, and the palace guards, they are terrible at cuddles. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch out slowly, paws extending, back arching, each vertebra clicking gently back into place. The linen basket creaks beneath your weight. You've slept here a dozen times before, sometimes out of sight, sometimes deliberately in the way. It's woven from Nile reeds, and still smells faintly of lavender from when Cleopatra's attendants fumigated the linens during that sandal fungus incident no one talks about anymore. Above you, heavy linen drapes ripple as someone walks past. You know the rhythm. Long stride, soft sole, slight limp in the left heel. That's Charmian, reliable, reserved, and always slightly annoyed when you rub against her shins, but she never kicks. You respect that. Your ears pivot backward. The queen is still asleep, her breath slow, even. Her bed is absurdly large, wide enough for 4 people, if needed, though usually it's just her, a pillow shaped like a lion's paw, and you. She sleeps diagonally, one arm flung over the edge, fingers occasionally twitching as if plucking strings in a dream. You hop out of the basket with practiced grace, landing silently on the cool mosaic tiles. They depict lotuses, ibises, and swirling Nile currents, all done in tiny chips of blue and ochre glass. Your paw pads know the way, past the incense burner, under the cedar writing desk, around the cushion-strewn corner where that drunken philosopher once tripped over you during a late-night poetry reading and blamed mystical forces. The garden's breeze reaches you before the open doors do. Warm air rolls in, bringing scents of fig, mint, and wet soil. Somewhere nearby, a fountain gurgles, just enough to mask the footsteps of the scribe trying to sneak out after spending the night in the archives again. You don't need to look to know he's clutching a scroll he wasn't supposed to copy. But you're not here to bust scribes. You leap onto a windowsill, paws tapping into sun-warmed stone, and take your first proper look at the waking palace. Alexandria hums. Birds flit between fig trees. A pair of acrobats practice flips near the fountain, under the wary gaze of a goat-legged statue. Servants bustle like beetles, their movements sharp, precise. This is not the time for errors. A parade is being prepared. You see the elephants first. 3 of them, brought in from the southern provinces, are already in the courtyard, adorned with painted ears and garlands of marigolds. One appears to be sulking beside a crate of pomegranates, its trunk occasionally knocking over a fruit as if in protest. A handler attempts to coax it into cheer with a honey-soaked fig. No success. Elephants make you nervous. You still remember the last festival, when one of them sneezed mid-ceremony and accidentally tossed its decorative saddle into the fish pond. The queen had to cover her laughter with a cough, while 2 high priests argued about whether it was an omen. And you had to run for cover when someone tried to place a silver crown on your head and call you the Cat of Peace. You are not the Cat of Peace. You are Cleopatra's cat. That's enough. You pad silently along the window ledge. Below, the kitchen door bangs open and a boy runs out carrying a basket of bread rolls. He is pursued by another boy who looks older, stronger, and very intent on reclaiming those rolls. You silently root for the thief. He's faster. The palace is always in motion, always noisy, but never in the same way twice. Some mornings are scrolls and whispers. Others are drums and panic. Today feels somewhere in between. A shadow crosses the courtyard. You squint upward. It's not a bird. Not quite. A kite maybe, tied to one of the acrobats, its string trailing from his belt like a tail. The wind lifts it with grace, then dips it toward the Queen's Tower, where the blue glass windows glint like beetle shells. Back in your room, the Queen's room, a new sound begins, stirring silks, the brush of fingers against the side of a clay jug, a sigh. She's waking. You trot back inside and leap lightly onto the foot of the bed, tail held high, then curl it into a question mark. Cleopatra, last queen of Egypt, opens one eye, sees you, smiles faintly. You again, she murmurs in Greek, her voice sanded down by sleep. Did you guard my dreams? You blink once. That's usually enough. She sits up slowly, the linen sheets slipping from one shoulder. Her eyes scan the horizon through the open doors, calculating. Always calculating. She may speak of poetry and perfume and stars, but even now, half dreaming, she's thinking of Rome. She stretches, you stretch with her, it's a routine. Then comes Charmian, punctual as sunrise, tray in hand, dates, cheese, honey, a ceramic cup steaming with something herbal. Cleopatra glances at it, then at you. I suppose you want your share. You hop forward, pause silent on the mattress, and begin to purr. Today, something is going to happen. You can feel it in your whiskers. The elephant trainer is arguing with a guard about parade routes. A scroll courier is arriving from the harbor with a letter sealed in purple wax. And in the far-off market near the temple of Serapis, a man with a crooked nose is whispering about a Roman fleet. But for now, you nuzzle against the queen's wrist. Her pulse is steady. The linens are soft. The sun is rising. And you, in this life, are safe. For now. The palace has corners that don't make sense. You know because you've tried to count them. As the queen's cat, you've had the luxury and the boredom of exploring every inch of Cleopatra's chambers and the wings beyond. Some rooms bend toward the east when the sun rises. Others seem to lean slightly inward, as though the walls themselves are eavesdropping. There is a hallway that leads only to a tiny alcove where no one goes, yet it is swept daily. Another hallway runs straight into a mosaic of a door. That door doesn't open but smells like myrrh. The Palace of Alexandria isn't just grand, it's strangely alive. You've come to call it the palace with no corners. Of course, there are literal corners. Even your nap basket has corners, though they're usually full of fur and biscuit crumbs. But the sense of corners, places where things stop, where one room ends and another begins, that is missing here. Everything flows. One chamber becomes a garden, becomes a shrine, becomes a dining room with a ceiling painted like the night sky. You once chased a lizard for half a morning and ended up in the astronomy wing, accidentally batting a bronze astrolabe off the ledge. It rang like a bell, and no one ever found the lizard. Today, you slink through the southern hallway, one you rarely visit. The tiles are cracked here. Fewer sandals pass this way. You pause beside a cracked urn filled with dried rose petals and something more bitter, wormwood maybe. Someone once stored scrolls in here, but now only ghosts bother. Even you tread lightly. Your destination, the upper terrace. It's quiet up there. Fewer attendants, no dancing girls, and most importantly, no elephants. You weave between curtain drapes that flutter like sails and leap onto the terraced railing. The sun-warmed stone comforting beneath your paws. From here, Alexandria stretches in all directions, rooftops gleaming with copper and clay, boats bobbing like beetles in the harbor, and far beyond the sea, so flat it looks like blue silk pulled taut. There's a breeze. You like the breeze, it carries smells. Fish, ink, papyrus, perfume, rain maybe, though the sky is clear, and something else. Smoke. Your ears twitch. You turn your head. Yes. Far in the western quarter, a thin ribbon of smoke unspools above the rooftops. Unusual for this time of day. That area holds the outer libraries and several scribe schools. You wonder if a careless oil lamp has started trouble again. Behind you, the Queen's voice floats through the corridors. "Where is he going now?" she asks. "She always speaks about you, like you're a visiting philosopher who doesn't quite understand the furniture." Charmian replies, "He's headed toward the terrace again." You hear Cleopatra's sandal hit the floor softly. Then, "Tell the cook he's to make that fish broth again, the one with the bits of lemon peel." You smile internally. If cats had eyebrows, you'd raise one. Later that day, you find yourself in one of the many cornerless chambers, this one filled with scrolls and statues. It's part storage, part museum, part political waiting room. Important guests are left here to wander and feel both impressed and slightly confused. You are not impressed. You curl beneath a low table and watch through half-closed eyes as a young noble from Cyrene fidgets with a carved jackal head. His robe is too clean, his sandals too new. First visit, you've seen dozens like him. Eventually, he does what they all do, try to open the secret door. There's a panel behind the statue of Sobek that looks like it might slide. It doesn't. The real door is behind the harp in the next room over, but no one ever finds it unless they're supposed to. You doze off as he starts pulling at the jackal's ears. Evening arrives in layers. First, the scent of roasted lamb drifting through the corridors, then the low thump of drums from the dancer's wing, finally, the hush that falls when the Queen speaks in the Hall of Echoes. You pad softly toward that hall now. It's not a grand place, despite the name. It's tucked near the Royal Library Annex, with a curved ceiling and walls made of porous stone that catch and return every whisper. You discovered it by accident once, chasing a moth. Cleopatra likes to rehearse speeches here, pacing back and forth, her voice multiplied softly around her. She speaks in Greek, Egyptian, and sometimes Latin, practicing diplomacy as if it were music. Tonight, she is rehearsing a letter to Rome. You lie just inside the door, ears tilted to catch the cadences. "I write not only as ruler of Egypt," she says in Greek, "but as the keeper of its balance. You ask for favors, and I offer alliance. You demand taxes, and I offer conversation. But do not mistake grace for weakness." A pause. Then softly, "Charmian, read that last part again. Does it sound too clever?" Charmian reads it. The Queen sighs, "I don't want to sound like I've swallowed a scroll." You yawn, wide and unbothered. The echo carries your yawn across the hall like a sleepy roar. Cleopatra looks over. "Even he thinks it's overdone," she says dryly. You wander back to your basket before moonrise. On the way, you pass the mosaic of Isis in the moon garden. The priestesses are leaving offerings, honey cakes, tiny vials of oil, a palm leaf folded into a heart shape. You once tried to eat one of the cakes. Bad idea, too many spices. You pause to watch as one priestess bows deeply, eyes closed, whispering a prayer about protection, love and insight. She opens one eye and sees you. She blinks. You blink back. Then she places a small, warm egg at the base of the statue and leaves. It smells promising. You wait until she's gone, then very delicately roll the egg onto the grass and tuck it beneath a leaf, a midnight snack perhaps. Back in your chamber, the linens have been changed. New lavender sprigs, new folds. The Queen is writing in the corner, lamp casting gold across her profile. She hums softly. Something old and familiar. You don't know the words. You only know it makes your tail curl around your paws with contentment. You curl into your basket. The palace with no corners breathes around you. Its secrets settle in. And you, for now, sleep in the middle of it all, quiet, unseen, entirely at home. The problem with royal fruit is that it always comes with consequences. You, of course, have no personal stake in mangoes. They are sticky and cooperative, and famously cat-unfriendly. But the humans, oh, the humans, they treat fruit as though it were laced with destiny. You've seen it before. One slice too ripe, one fig too bruised, and suddenly someone's poisoned, someone's promoted, and someone else is being quietly relocated to the Temple District for further reflection, all because a pomegranate dripped a little too dramatically at dinner. Today's drama begins, unsurprisingly, in the courtyard, where the queen's younger half-brother, Ptolemy, is sulking near the fountain. He's about 12, with the attitude of someone who believes every banquet is a referendum on his future. He is also currently holding a mango. This mango is not ordinary. It was sent from the far south where the air is thicker and the trees hum with invisible insects. It arrived in a lacquered box, alongside spices, scrolls, and a necklace made of carved shells. The queen sampled the mango delicately at breakfast, declared it ambitiously tart, and passed it along to the kitchen for preservation. Somehow, Ptolemy got to it first. You watch from the edge of the fig arbor, half hidden in shadow, tail curled neatly around your front paws. The boy fidgets with the mango like it's a live animal. He peels back a flap of its soft skin with all the grace of someone raised by scrolls, not knives. Juice immediately runs down his wrist. He licks it. He frowns. He looks around. Then he throws the mango into the fish pond. You blink, bold move. A servant nearby gasps. Ptolemy shouts, "It tasted strange." The servant wisely says nothing. You watch the mango bob gently among the lotus flowers, its golden skin now vaguely amphibian in appearance. The koi regard it with disdain. Later at lunch, someone coughs. Not just any cough, a serious, dramatic, attention-seeking sort of cough, the kind that stops conversation. It's Berenice, the queen's cousin twice removed, and unofficial ambassador of unwelcome advice. She points to her plate. There was mango in this, wasn't there? The queen arches an eyebrow. Is that a problem? I may be allergic, Berenice says, even as she takes another bite. The queen's smile is like polished bronze, and yet here you are. The room goes quiet. You're under the table, of course. Prime real estate. You've been listening to diplomatic tension build all morning. One wrong word and someone gets reassigned to a goat outpost near the Libyan border. Suddenly, a cup is knocked over. You don't flinch. The queen flinches less. Charmian steps forward. Should I send for the physician? No, Berenice says, waving a dainty hand. I'll just rest. She does not rest. She lingers, and then, dramatically, she faints. You resist the urge to sigh. The physician arrives quickly. He's old, smells of garlic and ink, and carries a pouch of strange tools that rattle ominously. He kneels beside Berenice, touches her wrist, frowns, and begins muttering to himself in Greek. You leap onto a bench nearby to get a better view. He smells like his cat doesn't like him very much. Pulse slow, he says. Is that bad? Ptolemy asks, voice too loud for someone innocent. Possibly, could be poison. The word hangs in the air like a storm cloud. All eyes turn to the food. Cleopatra, still calm, takes another bite of her fig. I suppose, she says, we'll have to determine whether this was sabotage or just indigestion. Everyone nods solemnly, except Ptolemy, who looks vaguely green. That afternoon, a council is called. Not the formal kind. This is the secret kind, held in the library's inner garden, where the sound of rustling papyrus keeps whispers from traveling. You slink behind a hedge and listen. "She's faking it," Charmian says. "She just wants to stall the Queen's Roman reply." "Or she's testing the court," says another voice, "seeing who sides with her." Cleopatra says nothing at first. Then she speaks softly, "Or someone is trying to poison us." Silence. "Could be Ptolemy," Charmian says. "He's 12. He's ambitious." More silence. You sneeze. The wind carries it. A few heads turn, but no one notices your shadow behind the hedge. You are always there. You always know more than you should. Evening brings soft lamps, low voices, and mango lockdown. All mangoes are now under guard. 2 soldiers are posted outside the fruit cellar. The fish pond is skimmed. Ptolemy is confined to his quarters for reflection. You saw him earlier trying to bribe a palace cat with chicken fat. The cat took the fat, did not return the favor. You, meanwhile, curl up in the Queen's reading chamber. She lounges on a chaise, scroll across her lap, one hand absently stroking your back. "What do you think?" she asks aloud. "Was it poison, a game, or just bad fruit?" You don't answer, but your purr grows louder. There is, after all, a fourth possibility. The mango was cursed. You remember something. A whisper, a servant saying the fruit came with a warning in Nubian script. The kitchen boy dropped the parchment. Someone swept it away. You close your eyes. You are not worried. You are just a cat. And tomorrow, you'll be a cat again. Unless, of course, the mango has other ideas. The desert campaign was supposed to be simple. That was the pitch. 3 days, maybe 4. A few horses, a few scrolls, and a diplomatic stop in the sands west of Memphis. You weren't supposed to come. In fact, Cleopatra specifically said, "Leave him. He hates heat." But someone, probably a junior officer with allergies, left the back of the chariot open, and you climbed in. You do hate heat, but you hate being left behind even more. Now, here you are, riding across Egypt's blazing spine in a royal war chariot, beside General Ankara, a man whose sandals are made of gazelle leather and whose knees creak like papyrus doors. It's not a war, technically. It's a literary demonstration of presence, which is Alexandria speak for "we heard someone stirring up trouble, so we're going to show up, smile, and wear swords very obviously, SS." You are tucked under a linen tarp. Paws hot, nose hotter, fur full of dust. Occasionally, the general reaches down to pat you with the kind of affection that feels more like testing a melon for ripeness. You are not amused. The first night in camp is chaos. Tents flap like startled birds, horses snort, men argue over whose bedroll smells worse. You escape early, slipping between sandal straps and campfires, finding refuge on a shaded rock beside the water barrels. There's a scent you don't like. Not danger, not yet, but something sour, off, the kind of smell that clings to uncertainty. The general's cook is shouting about cumin. A messenger is complaining that the papyrus curls too quickly in desert air, and the general himself. He's removing his sandals. You look away, out of mercy. The man has soft sandals, extremely soft, embroidered, cushioned, lined with goat hair. Not exactly the footwear of a fearsome general, but then again, Ankara has never cared for appearances. He fights in silence, gives orders like lullabies, and speaks to the stars when he thinks no one hears. That night, you fall asleep beside his tent, half buried in his cloak. At some point before dawn, he mutters, "They're not bandits, they're messages." You do not know what that means. But the wind stirs uncomfortably. The next morning, trouble arrives in the form of goats. Not warriors, not assassins, goats. 30 of them, trotting across the dunes in tight formation, bells clinking. At their head is a child no older than 8, holding a staff carved with stars. The general squints. You blink. The child bows deeply and introduces herself as Selkut, messenger of the Sand People. She is calm, direct. Her goats are better behaved than most generals. We don't want war, she says, but we won't let the mines expand. Mines, Ankra repeats. You dug into our sacred hill. I see. You watch as the general gently sets aside his cup of sour wine. This is the beginning of something bigger. You can feel it. And unfortunately, it will involve walking. Day 3. You are walking. Your paws are coated in sand. Your tail drags like a silk banner in the wind. You have been offered goat's milk. You refused. You have been sniffed by a camel. You retaliated. You have found exactly one patch of shade, and it was already occupied by an extremely arrogant beetle. Selkut leads the way to the disputed hill. It's nothing much, a rise in the land capped with pale stone, but the people believe it sings. They say it glows under moonlight, hums during storms, and once turned a man's beard completely white. The general steps onto the slope. Instantly, the air changes. No wind. No bird calls. Even the goats hold their breath. You narrow your eyes. Something here is complicated. Ankra kneels, brushes his fingers across the stone, mutters a prayer in Old Egyptian. Then he says, "We'll mark it off. No digging. The road will curve around." Selkut nods, her goats jingle. It's over, just like that. Or so you think. On the return trip, you fall ill. Not dramatically, no fainting into baskets, but your paws ache strangely, your fur feels static charged. You dream in languages you do not know. The general notices. He stops the caravan near a cluster of acacia trees and summons a healer. She's old, blind in one eye, and smells like boiled herbs and funerals. She touches your head and says, "He stepped on something sacred." Everyone goes very quiet. "You've cursed the cat," the general says, voice low. "No," the healer says, "he protected you. He took the curse." You blink slowly. You are suddenly the most important member of this convoy. The general orders a halt. A shrine is built, offerings are made. You are anointed with goat milk and saffron. Someone sings a lullaby off-key. You are not sure if you feel better, but you definitely feel important. Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra meets you at the palace gates. You are carried on a cushion. Ankra himself holds the corners. There is ceremony. There are whispers. The queen takes one look at your tired eyes, your dusty fur, your slight limp, and bursts out laughing. "You were supposed to stay home," she says, scratching your ear. You purr softly. She knows that means, "I blame your general." Later that night, in your basket, you dream of that hill. You hear music under stone. You smell mango. You see Ankra's soft sandals hanging beside a starry staff. You wake up before dawn. And somewhere in the distance, a goat bleats knowingly. Palace massages are not what most cats would consider relaxing. You're currently belly up on a silk pillow, legs splayed like a recently deboned fish, as two attendants attempt to oil and comb you into a state of ceremonial sleekness. One of them hums. The other has cold hands. Both keep calling you His Little Majesty, which is confusing and not entirely accurate. It's part of the pre-banquet grooming protocol. Cleopatra is hosting a peace envoy from Judea tonight, and you, her favored feline, are expected to be both decorative and immaculately clean. There's even talk of tying a ribbon around your neck. You plan to bite whoever makes the first move. Your massage is interrupted by a faint hiss, not yours. The room stiffens. There's something in the corridor. You hop upright, leaving a trail of sandalwood-scented fur behind. The guards step into place. And then you see it, a rolled-up papyrus scroll, tied with a black ribbon, placed precisely in the center of the hallway tiles. No footsteps, no knock, just the scroll, like a whisper made visible. This never ends well. The scroll is addressed to Cleopatra, only Cleopatra, not the court, not the council, not to be opened by someone more expendable. Charmian brings it into the queen's chamber with the kind of care one usually reserves for snakes or half-awake cobras. Cleopatra doesn't blink. She breaks the seal with a thumbnail and reads. Her expression doesn't change. Then she says, "Prepare the southern garden. Tonight we dine quietly." The entire household pivots. Banquet plans are canceled. Couriers are redirected. You watch as the palace transforms, not into panic but precision. When something frightens Cleopatra, she doesn't flinch, she sharpens. That night, the garden is lit with only 7 lamps. You count them, one for each of the gods she's hoping won't intervene. You sit beside her cushion as she waits. The guest arrives precisely at moonrise. He wears no jewelry, no sandals, no color, just white linen and a scar that runs from his temple to the corner of his mouth like a misplaced quill stroke. He kneels without greeting. "I was warned not to speak to you," he says. Cleopatra smiles. "You've already broken that rule." They talk. You drift in and out. The grass is cool beneath your stomach, and the wine-sweet air makes your eyes heavy, but you catch pieces. Assassins. 3 ships. Disguises. The man's voice is like gravel poured through honey. He speaks of a plot within the palace. Someone, an insider, wants Cleopatra gone. You twitch. The queen nods. You see it then. Not fear, not anger, but recognition. This is not the first warning, just the first one spoken aloud. In the days that follow, things change subtly. Servants are rotated. Guards are retrained. The cook now has a taster who is awkwardly allergic to cinnamon. You observe everything. And you notice something else. The queen's bath time is getting longer. It used to be 10 minutes, 15 tops. Now she soaks until the water cools, staring at the ceiling. She doesn't talk. She doesn't ask for stories. She lets the attendants oil her skin in silence. Something is brewing. You sit on the edge of the bath, tail twitching over the rim. You do not like the smell of this water. It's not the oils, it's something colder. She finally speaks, not to you, not to anyone, but to the surface of the water. If it comes to it, they won't find my body. You meow sharply. She looks at you, startled, then she laughs. "I'm only thinking out loud," she says. But you know better. 2 nights later, there's a gathering in the Hall of Owls. It's a secret council, 12 people. You're there, hidden behind a curtain, watching the queen through a gap in the silk. She lays out the facts calmly. "There's a list," she says. "I've seen it. My name, my brother's name, the Roman's name." "Which Roman?" someone asks. "Guess." "Julius Caesar's name hangs inspoken." There's arguing. One man wants to arrest the suspected traitors immediately. Another urges silence, patience. A third suggests staging an assassination attempt to root out the real culprits. Cleopatra listens, nodding, then says, "I'll handle it." And that's the end of the meeting. The next day, a servant vanishes. The one who had cold hands, the one who oiled your fur. No one speaks of her again. You never smelled blood, you never heard a cry. But her sandals are still beneath the window bench, one strap broken, the other perfectly intact. That night, Cleopatra invites the ambassador of Judea to dinner again. It is a quiet meal. She feeds you a piece of duck glazed in pomegranate syrup. You do not know what happened to the girl with cold hands. But you know Cleopatra slept deeply that night. So did you. You've always found exile mildly entertaining. Not for yourself, of course, you're far too important for that. But watching humans get sent away, that never gets old. The scrolls, the tears, the overly dramatic packing of too many robes and not enough sandals. Every departure is a performance. Today's performance features Ashira, one of Cleopatra's younger advisors, being dispatched to Eugene for reconsideration of her tone. You liked Ashira. She let you bat at her peacock feather quill when no one was looking. But lately, she's been arguing too much about taxes, and the queen hates being told she can't afford more marble fountains. Still, it's not Ashira's departure that's interesting. It's where she's being sent, Eugene. A city far to the east, deep into the dust and spices of the subcontinent, where the air smells like cardamom and the wind carries strange songs. And more importantly, she's not going alone. Cleopatra is sending a retinue. 50 men, 2 scribes, 1 very confused harpist, and for reasons that remain unclear, you. The journey is long. You spend the first week sulking in the royal carriage, curled beneath a parasol like an offended god. The scribes debate everything, the best route, the most poetic way to describe the queen's absence, whether or not it's technically appropriate to serve wine before dusk when traveling through provinces that worship cow spirits. You are less concerned with etiquette and more concerned with the roads. They are dusty, uneven, full of chickens. You hate chickens. They travel in packs and flap with reckless indifference. One of them pecks your tail on day 3. You plot revenge for the next 40 kilometers. Eventually, you arrive. Eugene is not Alexandria. The air tastes different here, sweeter, heavier, like cinnamon left out in the rain. The people walk slower but think faster. They wear strange sandals and speak in languages that flutter like fans. The market is a kaleidoscope. Spices piled like volcanoes, silks dyed in beetle shell blues, monkeys stealing fruit with alarming efficiency. You are given your own room in the governor's compound. It has a window, a fountain, and exactly 1 pillow. You disapprove of the pillow. It smells like dried mango and someone else's dreams. Ashira begins her work. Her reflection, as the queen called it, involves an alarming amount of paperwork. She reviews grain tallies, water disputes, temple donations, and the occasional complaint from someone who believes their neighbor's cow is cursed. You attend most of her sessions. Not by choice, she insists on having you nearby for moral clarity. You find a spot on the ledger table and pretend to sleep. But you listen. You hear things. Whispers of a merchant who claims to dream in hieroglyphs, a farmer whose well sings at night, a boy who saw a cat-shaped shadow walk into a temple and never come out. You take notes, not with ink, just in the way your ears twitch and your tail curls when something matters. One day it rains. Not the sharp rain of Alexandria, but a warm, persistent drizzle that smells like green things growing. Ashira decides it's time for spiritual realignment, which you assume means incense and muttering. Instead, she drags you to a meditation hall just outside the city. It is very quiet, too quiet. A man sits in the center of the room, eyes closed, breathing slowly. You've seen cats sleep more dramatically. His name is Vadan. He opens one eye, sees you, and says, "Ah, you brought the clever one." You blink. Ashira bows awkwardly. This is the queen's companion. Of course, he says. She sends her sharpest ears. You aren't sure if that's a compliment. Vadan speaks slowly. He talks about the wind and time, about how words shape thoughts and thoughts shape empires. Ashira listens. You listen. Occasionally, someone brings tea and forgets to offer you any. At one point, he places a bowl of milk in front of you. You sniff it. It smells like clarity. You lap at it slowly. For 10 minutes no one speaks. The rain continues. The world feels balanced. You return to the compound with Ashira, calmer than you've ever seen her. She writes 3 letters that evening, one to Cleopatra, one to her brother, the one who runs a date orchard, and one to someone named Kay that she burns after writing. You never find out who Kay is. But the next day, a shipment of saffron arrives with no sender. A week later, Ashira is summoned back to Alexandria. Her tone, apparently, has improved. You are to return with her. The harpist stays behind. No one questions this. On the last morning before departure, you sneak out to the temple where the singing well is said to be. You find it. The temple is cracked and quiet. The well is deeper than it should be. You peer in. You do not hear singing. You hear breathing. Slow, steady, familiar. You leave a paw print on the rim of the well and walk away without looking back. Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra greets you with a raised eyebrow. Did you learn anything? You jump onto her lap. Purr once. She laughs. I suppose that means yes. You close your eyes. You dream of cinnamon rain. It starts with a goat. A small one, smells like incense and socks, and it's standing in the queen's study. You are perched on the windowsill sunning your whiskers when the goat bleats with theatrical sadness and relieves itself on a stack of foreign correspondence. The queen, not even looking up from her scroll, mutters, "Someone's going to explain this." Turns out, the goat is a gift. A diplomatic gift, which means it's not really a goat, it's a message. Specifically, it's from a visiting philosopher from the Western Hills, a man known for strange arguments, wide-brimmed hats, and a particular fondness for metaphors involving fish. He's come to debate Cleopatra, which would be fine if he hadn't brought 17 scrolls, 3 assistants, a goat, and, unfortunately, you. You are formally invited to attend every session as the imperial witness. Apparently, your presence keeps the queen grounded. You suspect it's more about keeping the goat in line. The philosopher's name is Pythian. He is thin, beardy, smells faintly of turmeric and wet parchment. His voice drones like a distant bee trapped in a lyre. He insists that all knowledge can be reduced to 3 categories: fire, breath, and shadows. You immediately dislike him. But Cleopatra is intrigued. She clears a week on her schedule. Every afternoon, under the lemon trees, she and Pythian argue about fate, identity, the shape of time, and whether birds dream in pictures or numbers. You mostly sleep through it. Until one day it gets personal. The soul, Pythian says, is not fixed, it is shaped by the company we keep. He gestures to the goat, and then to you. Cleopatra raises an eyebrow, careful. I mean no insult, he says quickly, only observation. You yawn. He continues, this cat, he's clever, perhaps too clever, he sees more than he lets on. You blink slowly. The goat sneezes. That night, something odd happens. You wake up in the scriptorium. You don't remember walking there. The room is empty. A scroll has fallen from a shelf. It's unsealed. You pad over. The words are unfamiliar, not Egyptian, not Greek. They curl and twist like vines. You stare. They seem to shift under your gaze, realigning themselves. The room smells faintly of oil, ink, and goat. Then a soft rustle behind you. You turn. No one's there. But your paw is in wet ink. You've written something. A single glyph, scratched into the dust with your claw. You do not know what it means. But you feel it in your ribs, behind your eyes, like a sneeze waiting in your brain. The next day, you keep close to the queen. Pythian is waiting. He seems different. Tense. The goat has been shaved. No one knows why. The queen begins today's debate with a question. If the soul shifts shape, does truth shift with it? Pythian hesitates. He glances at you, then says, "Perhaps we have misnamed truth altogether." You meow loudly. Everyone turns. Cleopatra smiles. Even the cat has opinions. "I think," Pythian says slowly, "your cat dreams in languages no man remembers." Later that afternoon, you find yourself back in the scriptorium. Again. This time, you remember walking. But something's different. A scroll is open. The one from before. Except now the ink has moved. Your paw print is there, but beside it a new line, same curling script, same sense of buzzing. You reach out just once and touch the scroll. And suddenly, you're somewhere else. A garden. But not the palace garden. Wilder, older. There are trees you do not know, water that sings, shadows shaped like people. One turns to you and speaks your name. Except it's not your name, not the one humans use. It's the name behind your ears. The name that makes your tail twitch. You wake up beneath the queen's couch. Your fur smells like saffron and rain. You avoid the scriptorium after that. For a while. Instead, you spend more time in the temple wing, napping beside statues, listening to the slow chant of old priests. One day, a priestess stops mid-prayer and looks at you. "You've walked the old gardens," she whispers. You pretend to sneeze. But her eyes don't leave yours. Eventually, Pythian leaves. He bows to the queen, not deeply. He does not look at you. But he leaves behind one scroll. Labeled. You watch Cleopatra as she places it in the fire without opening it. "That man asked too many questions," she murmurs. Then, looking down at you, "And you, my dear, answered too few." You blink once, twice, and curl around her feet. Outside, the goat bleats one final time, and is never seen again. The trouble with elephants is that they never forget, and they especially never forget stairs. You remember the day the royal architects finished the renovations on the upper colonnade. New columns, polished marble, better drainage, and most importantly, wider stairs. There was a ceremony. Musicians played. A man released 3 doves that immediately flew into a fresco. Everyone clapped politely. The problem, of course, was that no one told the elephants. Specifically, Prince Narmer, Cleopatra's prize war elephant, gifted to her by a Mauryan diplomat after a very awkward dinner conversation involving stolen spices and the invention of chess. Narmer was intelligent, curious, prone to fits of poetic melancholy, and on occasion extremely flatulent. And today, Narmer is supposed to be making a ceremonial appearance at the temple of Isis, which, unfortunately, is up a flight of stairs. You're following at a safe distance. The morning is humid, the procession is grand, priests in gold-trimmed robes, dancers balancing oil lamps on their heads, musicians with panpipes and ankle bells. Cleopatra walks just behind Narmer, who wears a blue-dyed harness and an expression of deep existential concern. The stairs loom ahead. Narmer stops. Cleopatra raises an eyebrow. The priests pause in their chanting. You slink beneath a palm frond and watch. Narmer snorts loudly, shuffles forward, one foot touches the first step, then stops again. A long silence. Then, in one majestic act of rebellion, Narmer turns around, walks straight into a shrubbery, and lies down. The rest of the morning is spent in quiet chaos. The musicians improvise a contemplative interlude. The dancers attempt to fan Narmer with silk scarves. A priest suggests building a ramp. Another priest weeps softly. You find a vantage point on a stone bench, tail flicking. Cleopatra eventually sighs, waves off the ceremony, and kneels beside her elephant. She speaks to him in a language you don't know, soft, old, full of vowels and wind. Narmer grumbles, rolls over, accepts a handful of dates. The ceremony is officially moved to the lower courtyard. Later, you hear a rumor the stairs offended him, not their steepness, their attitude. Back at the palace, a council is convened. Not about the elephant, not directly, but Cleopatra's advisors are concerned. If Narmer won't ascend the stairs, how can they stage the upcoming Festival of Strength? There must be a solution, says Pothinus, chief of ceremonial logistics. Charmian suggests a pulley system. A young architect proposes an entirely new temple with no stairs at all. You suggest nothing. You are asleep under the planning table, curled beside the blueprints. 2 nights later, a solution presents itself. You are wandering the outer halls when you spot a strange figure moving silently through the colonnade. A woman, barefoot, with a rope around her waist and a basket of herbs. She stops beside Narmer's enclosure, whispers something. The elephant stirs. She opens the gate. He follows. You follow. The woman leads him to the stairway. She lays herbs on each step, then climbs. Slowly. Narmer watches. Then, miraculously, follows. Step by step. At the top he trumpets not loud, not defiant, but proud. The woman bows, disappears into the shadows. You find her name the next day, Nephra, temple herbalist, known for treating camel anxiety and once resurrecting a rooster with mint tea. She is promoted. Narmer is declared spiritually elevated. The festival proceeds. And you, well, you are named guardian of the eastern steppes. No one knows what that means. But you enjoy the title. In the weeks that follow, Narmer grows philosophical. He visits the library, not inside but near enough to hear readings. He refuses to eat mangoes. He adopts a baby heron. One morning, you find him meditating. The elephant, meditating. You sit beside him, say nothing. It's peaceful. Until a goat sneezes in the courtyard, and everything falls apart again. But for that one moment, on those once scorned stairs, you and Narmer exist in perfect balance. Neither above nor below. Just there. Watching Alexandria wake. There is an art to failure. And nowhere is this art practiced with more flair than during a Ptolemaic coronation. Cleopatra has planned hers with precision. Every rose petal placed, every lyre string tuned. The astrologers have agreed on the most auspicious date, though 2 of them secretly disagree and have vowed never to speak again. The food is ready, the scribes are inked, and the imported falcons are prepped for a symbolic release that, if all goes well, will not involve anyone losing an ear. But nothing, of course, goes well. You are there from the start, you see it all. All 92 mistakes. Yes, someone counted. It begins with the robes. Cleopatra's ceremonial garb is meant to include 3 elements: a white linen tunic, a gold-threaded cape, and a sacred sash bearing the symbol of Isis. The sash is missing, replaced, mysteriously, with a strip of laundry from the apothecary's quarters that smells faintly of mint and goat. Then the scepter snaps. Not dramatically, just enough that Cleopatra's hand twitches mid-blessing and accidentally taps the high priest of Ra in the forehead. He says nothing, but his expression suggests he may change religions. You're sitting on the dais, tail curled, watching servants scramble with the desperate choreography of those who know they will be blamed either way. Next, the choir. They begin too early, then too loudly, then in entirely the wrong language. One girl faints. You suspect she wasn't paid. The queen does not flinch. She adjusts her mint-scented sash and keeps speaking. Her voice cuts through the chaos like a bronze blade. But the audience, ambassadors, nobles, soldiers, are starting to sweat. Literally. Because someone miscalculated the timing of the sun. The coronation platform was built to catch morning light in a glorious cascade of gold. But today, a freak alignment of clouds and architectural misjudgment means the sunlight now reflects directly off the polished marble behind the dais, straight into everyone's eyes. Half the crowd is squinting. One senator from Cyprus begins weeping, either from emotion or temporary blindness. You purr in sympathy, then sneeze. The echo carries across the hall. Cleopatra glances down at you. Even is unimpressed, she says. Halfway through the ceremony, the sacred falcons are released. Or rather, one is. The other two refuse to leave their basket. The released falcon circles 3 times, then lands directly on a bowl of lentils. It eats. Someone claps, no one else joins in. Then comes the final straw. The blessing of the waters. This ancient rite involves pouring Nile water into a silver basin while reciting a prayer to the goddess Satis. It symbolizes renewal, prosperity, and royal alignment with the flow of destiny. The priest lifts the jug. It's empty. Silence. He turns pale. Cleopatra, without missing a beat, takes her own drinking cup, pours it into the basin, and says the prayer herself. The audience erupts into applause. Not because they think it went well, but because it is finally, mercifully over. Afterward, the palace throws a banquet. This at least goes smoothly. The food is divine, the wine flows, the musicians recover their dignity. The falcons, now 3, are coaxed into perching silently near the dessert table. You curl beneath the queen's chair and listen as she recounts the chaos with Charmian. 92 mistakes, she says, sipping her wine. Charmian raises a brow. That we noticed. Cleopatra laughs. They'll call it historic. They'll call it cursed. Either way, the queen says, they'll remember it. You stretch luxuriously. History, after all, is written by the sleep-deprived, the sun-blinded, and the ones who remember how to laugh at a mango-scented sash. Later that night, you find the high priest of Ra sitting alone in the garden. He holds his forehead gently, muttering about omens and balance. You jump onto the bench beside him. He glances at you, then says, "Next time we crown a goose." You approve. History books will tell you that the Battle of Kalinga was a bloodbath. What they don't tell you, because no one bothered to ask the cats, is that your version of the battle involved paper shields, a borrowed chariot cushion, and an extremely persistent donkey. You weren't supposed to be there. This is a common theme in your life. Officially, Cleopatra sent a gift delegation to the Eastern Front, part of a strategy to soften relations with a few volatile provinces whose governors were increasingly fond of swords. The mission included spices, scrolls, and one rather sarcastic physician, and, inexplicably, you. Someone claimed you were a symbol of peace. More likely, you simply hopped into the supply cart when no one was looking. You had your eye on a cushion you liked. 3 weeks later, you found yourself in Kalinga. And it was not what you expected. First, there was the battle. Or rather, the non-battle. The governor of Kalinga, a wiry man named Sonda with too many rings and not enough humor, had fortified the city with alarming enthusiasm. Walls, ditches, even a moat which mostly smelled of fish and resignation. But when the Egyptian convoy arrived, he didn't send troops. He sent invitations. "Come talk," his note said, "but no metal." So the soldiers left their swords at the gates. They were given paper shields. Literally. Crafted from thick, lacquered scroll parchment, painted with decorative lions and vaguely threatening lotuses. You watched as grown men tried to look intimidating while holding what were essentially oversized bookmarks. It was marvelous. The governor welcomed Cleopatra's delegation into the city square. There was music, dancers, a table of dates that the local monkeys were eyeing with criminal intent. Then came the speeches. You curled beneath a fruit basket and listened. Sonda spoke of balance, of trade routes, of celestial omens, and how the last time he saw a cat with stripes like yours, it rained for 3 days, and all his granaries flooded. He asked if he could rub your ears. You declined. The Egyptian envoy, led by a diplomat named Hakenu, replied with equally flowery language. Mentions of mutual prosperity, sister stars, and a poem about the Nile that had clearly been translated too literally. Somewhere in the middle of this, the donkey arrived. No one knows where it came from. It trotted confidently into the square, approached the governor, stole a date, and then, staring everyone directly in the eye, relieved itself on the floor. A stunned silence. Then laughter. Even Sonda laughed, a gift from the gods, he declared. Someone tried to write it into the treaty. Later, in the governor's garden, the two delegations shared tea. A breeze stirred the palms. The paper shields were repurposed as coasters. You napped on a silk pillow that may have once belonged to a minor deity. Sonda leaned toward Hakenu. This could have gone badly. Hakenu nodded. So could the lentils. Both men nodded solemnly. You stretched, yawned, and flicked a date pit off the table. The Battle of Kalinga was later described in Egyptian records as a strategic non-conflict, resulting in shared territorial understanding, and 2 donkeys adopted into the royal courier fleet. You were awarded a medallion. It was made of polished jade and featured a cat in mid-yawn. Cleopatra laughed when she saw it. "So now you're a diplomat," she said. You batted it off the table. It landed in her lap. She pinned it to your cushion. That night, back in Alexandria, she held you on her lap during a private audience. "The world wants war," she murmured, "but sometimes all it takes is a donkey and a stubborn cat." You purred. Outside, it began to rain. Just a little. Just enough to flood a granary or 2. The queen has taken to bathing more often. This would not be remarkable. Cleopatra has always loved her milk baths, her lotus oils, her slow infusions of crushed pearls and poetic sighs, but lately there's something different about the way she lowers herself into the steaming water. It's not indulgence. It's repentance. You watch from your usual perch atop the gilded bench. The steam coils around your whiskers. The scent today is lemon and frankincense. She lies back, closes her eyes, and exhales as if the weight of the Nile itself is pressing on her chest. "Too many names," she says softly. "You don't ask. You never do." It began 3 nights ago. A scroll arrived from the eastern provinces, sealed in red wax. You smelled the wax, cinnamon, clove, and regret. The news was plain. The rebellion had been put down, completely, brutally. She hadn't ordered it, not directly, but her signature was on the original campaign authorization, and now the sand runs red. The reports say over 2,000. She reads them, all of them, by lamplight, slowly. You sit beside her, tail still, eyes open, heart quiet. The queen does not cry, but she does stop halfway through her wine, and she does not touch her figs. The next morning she visits the temple, not in ceremony, alone. You trail behind her through the morning fog, pause silent on the cobbled walk. The temple of Isis is cold this early, its stones smelling of dew and silence. She kneels. The priestess offers her oil. She refuses. "I'm not here to be seen," she says. "I'm here to ask forgiveness." The priestess bows, leaves her be. You watch from a pillar. Her prayer is long. When she stands, her legs shake just once. Back at the palace, she summons the head scribe. "I want a record," she says, "not an official one, a true one." The scribe blinks. "Majesty?" "I want names," she says. "The ones who died, as many as we can find, I want them recorded." He hesitates. "All of them?" She nods. "And where shall they be kept?" She looks at you. "Where he sleeps." You now sleep beside a growing scroll pile. Each morning a new one arrives. Thin at first, then thicker. Handwritten names, sometimes with notes: a fisherman, a mother, a boy who sold honey. You don't understand the script, not all of it. But you understand weight. It settles into the floorboards, into your basket, into her spine. She bathes longer now, sometimes twice a day. The attendants are quiet. Even Charmian, who usually hums, is silent as she pours rose water over the queen's shoulders. Once Cleopatra looks up and says, "How many baths does it take to feel clean?" No one answers. You think, the water isn't meant to clean. It's meant to carry. One afternoon, a philosopher visits. A new one. Young, earnest, eyes like someone who still believes questions are stronger than swords. He talks of karma, of cycles, of balance. She listens, then says, "What if I tip the scale back?" He frowns. "With what?" She gestures to the basin, "With salt water, with ink, with remembering." He nods slowly. "You'll need help," he says. She glances down at you. "I already have it." That night she writes. Not orders, not letters. Stories. Tiny fragments. The man with the jackal tattoo sold dried fish at the edge of the square. Her sandals never matched. She claimed the gods liked her asymmetry. He played the flute badly, but only when he was happy. She writes until her fingers cramp, then feeds the scrolls to the fire. You watch them curl and blacken. She doesn't cry, but she doesn't eat her figs. In the days that follow, she speaks differently. Not to officials, not to Rome, but to servants, to guards, to you. She says thank you more. She asks for names. She listens to jokes that don't land. And she laughs softly, like a coin dropped into a well. One morning, you wake to find her asleep in the bath. Water cold. Scroll still in hand. You curl beside the tub and keep watch. Someone tries to speak, you hiss. The scroll in her hand has only one word. A name. You don't recognize it. But you carry it anyway. In the way you sit beside her. In the way your tail doesn't flick when the wind howls. In the way you return every night to sleep beside the scroll pile. Even as it grows. There is a limit to how much stone one scribe can chisel before he starts questioning all his life choices. And today, that limit has been reached. You are lying in the shade of a half-finished column, tail swishing occasionally for dramatic effect, as four scribes argue over the correct angle of a capital letter, Ka. One insists it needs more flow, another demands more gravity, and the third has dropped his chisel altogether and is muttering softly into a pile of sand. The fourth, he's your favorite. He brings you snacks. His name is Dejet. He's 27, has ink stains on every visible part of his body, and is currently carving one of Cleopatra's newest declarations into a slab of limestone that is taller than most of the men assigned to guard it. The declaration is long, very long. Too long, if you ask Djet. But it's the Queen's order, a new set of royal edicts written not on papyrus, not whispered to scribes behind silk curtains, but carved into stone and placed throughout the empire. Let them be read by eyes unblinking, she said, and unburnable. You witnessed the first one go up last month. A massive pillar, 12 cubits tall, placed outside the temple of Serapis. Cleopatra stood beside it in silence as a priest anointed the top with lotus oil. Children threw flower petals. A goat tried to eat one. A guard slapped its nose. The goat held a grudge. But even in that ceremony, you saw what the Queen saw: permanence. She has always loved words. But lately, she has grown suspicious of paper. Paper burns. Stone endures. Djet is now halfway through Article 4, on the treatment of orphans, the aged and particularly clever cats. Yes, you're mentioned. You assume it was a joke. The Queen has been slipping those into her policy lately. Like, no bananas in the public fountains. Or, all doves must be taught basic navigation before ceremonial release. You suspect she's testing the scribes. Djet, to his credit, simply nods and chisels. The process is slow. Painfully slow. You nap between lines. Literally. At one point, Djet carves around your tail without complaint. You know, he mutters, some kingdoms use ink for this. You blink. He sighs and keeps carving. Other scribes arrive. One is new, young, eager, wearing sandals too clean for this kind of work. He watches Djet for 5 minutes before asking, "Shouldn't we abbreviate?" Djet doesn't look up. You want to abbreviate the Queen? The boy pales. No, I mean, never mind. You approve. At sunset, Cleopatra arrives. No procession, just her and Charmian. She reads what's been carved. Silently. Then nods. It will do. Djet bows. The Queen kneels beside you, scratches behind your ears. Do you think the world will listen? She asks. You purr. She smiles. I suppose not. Later that night, you follow her to the archives. She pulls a scroll, old, faded, edges curling like burned leaves. Words are fragile, she says, more to herself than you, but they're all we have. She tucks the scroll into a wooden box. Seals it. Writes one word on the lid, later. You don't know if it's a promise or a threat. Back at the stone yard, Djet finishes Article 7. It's about taxes. No jokes this time. You curl up on the base of the pillar and fall asleep. Above you, etched forever, are words about fairness, kindness, and somehow how cats should be given water bowls that are not absurdly shallow. You assume that last part was Charmian's doing, or perhaps Djet's. Either way, you approve. Weeks pass. More pillars rise. One outside the library. One in the northern garden. One, oddly, in the bakery district. People stop to read. Some scoff. Some nod. One man touches the stone, closes his eyes, and whispers a name. You watch from a distance. And you realize something. Paper may flutter, but stone hums. And tonight, as the moonlight strikes the newest pillar just right, the words seem to glow. Even the cats can read them, if they want to. There is a rule now at the palace: no screaming during meals. This might seem like common sense, but you'd be surprised how often dinner conversations in Alexandria end in someone throwing a fig. It started after the Kalinga news, After the scrolls stopped arriving, after Cleopatra's silences grew longer and her laughter more brittle, one night a general raised his voice over dessert, something about border patrols and barley smugglers, and the queen simply stood up, walked out, and ordered that all future meals be conducted in quiet. No more raised voices, no more debate, and absolutely no mangoes. You're adjusting well to the new regime. The palace dining room has become a haven of stillness. The usual roar of power has been replaced by the gentle clink of ceramic, the soft rustle of linen, and the subtle joy of rice. Yes, rice. The royal diet has changed. You personally have always been suspicious of rice. It rolls, it sticks, it hides beneath your paws and makes you look clumsy. But lately it's everywhere. Saffron rice, almond rice, rose petal rice, rice served on leaves, rice packed into little pyramids that look suspiciously like the monuments on the Eastern Promenade. The queen barely touches it, but she insists it be served. She says it's a food without argument. Charmian is thriving. She's invented a whole system of silent conversation using only eyebrow movements and the occasional twitch of her soup spoon. You've learned to read them. A full brow raise means pass the figs. A left-only twitch means that noble is lying. A slow blink with a shoulder shrug means this rice is a metaphor and I am exhausted. You're fluent now. Meals are smaller. The grand feasts are rare. Instead, Cleopatra eats with a select few, Charmian, a scribe, sometimes a visiting priest, and always you. You're placed beside her, on a low cushion embroidered with the eye of Horus. It used to be the eagle of Rome, but that thread was quietly picked out. You're not sure if anyone else noticed. You did. One evening, a strange guest appears. He is thin, old, wears robes dyed with onion skins and safflower. He brings a small wooden box and a larger wooden silence. No one knows his name. He is invited to dine without introduction. The meal is lentils and rice with pomegranate glaze. He says nothing until the final bite. Then he opens the box. Inside, a peach. Not a local one. A mountain peach from the far north, a fruit that takes weeks to travel and hours to ripen. He rolls it across the table. It stops in front of Cleopatra. "Do you remember these?" he asks. She looks at it for a long time, then says, "I do." She does not eat it. She sends it to the kitchen to be planted. "Maybe we'll grow one." The man nods and leaves. Later, in her chamber, she says to you, "I haven't eaten meat in weeks." You nudge her ankle. "Or honey," she adds. You blink. She smiles. "It's strange, I don't miss them." She sits. You hop into her lap. Her hands are thinner now, but steady. "We're quieter now," she murmurs. "Do you think it's better?" You press your forehead into her palm. She takes that as a yes. Elsewhere in the palace, the kitchen has changed. There's less shouting. The new head cook meditates before each meal. He insists it makes the bread rise better. You've seen worse ideas. You're given your own bowl now. It's ceramic, hand-painted. A gift from the potter's niece, who saw you once in the garden and declared you the cat with moon paws. You don't correct her. She leaves rice in your bowl every morning. You eat it slowly, with dignity, mostly. On the first day of the quiet dinners, someone dropped a fork. The sound echoed like thunder. Everyone flinched. Now, they use wooden cutlery. The echo is gone, replaced by soft chewing, slow nods, and eyes that watch instead of dart. It's a strange kind of peace, but peace nonetheless. One night, Cleopatra speaks during dinner. Just once. A single sentence. When I die, let them say I ate rice with intention. No one replies, but you look up and purr, because you will remember, and so will the rice. Meditation, it turns out, is not a natural skill for queens or for cats. You're watching Cleopatra attempt it again this morning, seated cross-legged on a woven mat beside the reflecting pool. The water is calm. The lotus flowers are blooming. A heron stands nearby with enviable balance. And the queen, her eyes are closed, her spine is straight, her expression is noble, serene, and wait for it, yes, there it is. One eye cracks open, her fingers twitch. 6 minutes. A new record. You're impressed. Last time she only made it to 4. It began with the visiting nun. Her name was Tessa, and she arrived with 2 things, a battered satchel and an air of relentless calm. She said little, smiled often, walked everywhere barefoot, which scandalized exactly 3 courtiers and delighted the kitchen boy, who declared her a ghost who eats carrots. She said she came to observe the balance of breath. The queen was curious. So were you. Tessa offered a session. Cleopatra agreed. You attended, of course. You were promised cushions. The first attempt was dramatic. The palace had never been so quiet. Even the birds seemed unsure what to do. The queen tried. She really did. But halfway through the breathing exercise, she announced that the mat was too scratchy, and the incense reminded her of funerals. Tessa said nothing, just nodded and handed her a mango. That helped. You, on the other paw, took to meditation quickly. Not the breathing, not your style, but the sitting, the silence, the noble stillness. You were made for it. You are now considered the most spiritually advanced creature in the courtyard. A beetle once tried to out-meditate you. He failed. Over the weeks, Cleopatra kept trying. She moved locations, changed cushions, fired one incense blender, and hired another who used cinnamon and citrus. She slowly improved. From 2 minutes to 3. From shallow sighs to deeper inhales. You watched it all. Sometimes from her lap, sometimes from the roof tiles, sometimes from the reflection in the pond. She liked the quiet. Not at first. But eventually, she stopped treating it like a performance, and started treating it like a conversation with someone she couldn't yet hear. Tessa never stayed the night. She said the palace was too tall. But each morning she returned. She never scolded, never instructed, just reminded the queen to sit, to breathe, to wait. And once, she said something you never forgot. You can't see the moon in rippled water. You weren't sure what it meant, until you saw the queen sit completely still on a windy day, and wait for the pond to settle. One afternoon, a Roman envoy arrived. He barged into the meditation session, demanded audience, declared urgency. The queen opened one eye, said 3 more minutes, closed it again. He waited. In silence. The court whispered of a power shift. You whispered nothing. You were napping. Tessa left on the morning of the 3rd new moon. No goodbye. Just a folded note on the meditation mat. It read, "Stillness is not absence," and a drawing of a cat. You assume it was you. The likeness was flattering. Now, Cleopatra meditates every morning. Sometimes 10 minutes. Sometimes only 2. Sometimes she opens her eyes and says, "Today I only thought about figs." You nod. Figs are powerful. The palace is quieter now. Not sad, just settled. Like a bowl finally set down. People speak more slowly. Walk with intention. Even the guards have started humming instead of yelling. The lotus pond is always clear. The beetle has not returned. You are still undefeated. This morning, the queen meditated for 6 whole minutes. No fidgeting. No sighs. Just breath. You curled beside her, unmoving. She opened her eyes. Smiled. I think, she said, I'm learning. You closed your eyes. And stayed still. Because you knew. She was. The first thing you notice about her is the way she laughs. It's not loud, not bold, but light, rippling like papyrus leaves in the Nile breeze. It comes unexpectedly at the end of a sentence, like she's just realized the world is funnier than people admit. Her name is Sapphira. She's a nun from the temple district, sent to the palace archives to assist with a complicated inventory involving damaged scrolls, ancient tax ledgers, and a suspicious document written entirely in riddles. No one knows where it came from. One theory involves a sleep-deprived astrologer and too much fennel wine. You find her on her first day, sitting cross-legged in a pool of sunlight, surrounded by stacks of documents, and humming a tune you haven't heard in 100 lifetimes. You curl beside her. She glances at you, smiles, and without hesitation says, Your Majesty. You blink. She's not looking at you, ironically. She's serious. Within days, she becomes a fixture. Not just in the archives, but everywhere words linger too long. She fixes broken scripts, reshelves misclassified mythologies, and most notably, she makes Cleopatra laugh. This is not easy. The queen rarely laughs these days. Not real laughter, not the kind that shakes her shoulders and makes her press her hand to her chest like she's catching joy before it escapes. But Sapphira. She tells puns in Sanskrit. And Cleopatra, woman fluent in 6 languages, allergic to boredom and immune to court flattery, laughs. Every time. You start following Sapphira, not just because she smells like ink and almond paste, but because she hums songs that no longer exist. She scratches behind your ears while reading about ancient treaties. She gives you nicknames. You pretend to mind, but you sit closer each time. One morning, she asks the queen, Do you ever feel like you were born into a sentence that hasn't finished yet? Cleopatra blinks, then says, Every day. Sapphira nods. I think that's why we tell stories, to end the sentence in a way we can live with. The queen is silent for a long time, then gestures to a scroll. Write that down. They talk often now. Not strategy, not politics, but people. They talk about the cook who sings to his pickles, about the stable boy who believes he was once a cloud, about the priestess who folds her prayers into paper boats and sets them adrift in the lily pools. They talk about memory and silence and words so old they've lost their meanings. And they talk about cats. Mostly you. Sapphira claims you were once a god. Cleopatra says you're still auditioning. You approve of both answers. One afternoon, during a storm, they sit in the reading room while thunder grumbles across the city. The queen reads poetry aloud. Sapphira interrupts with alternate endings. At one point, they argue for 20 minutes over whether a metaphor involving bees and justice is too ambitious. You fall asleep halfway through. When you wake, the room smells of sandalwood and stillness. And the queen is smiling without trying. Then one evening, Sapphira leaves. No warning. Just a folded parchment left on the queen's night table. It says, You are more than a story, but your story is worth telling. Below that, a doodle. Of you. wearing a crown. Cleopatra reads it 3 times, then looks at you, says she was too good for this court. You purr softly, and nudge the parchment into her lap. Weeks pass. No one speaks of where Sapphira went, but her presence lingers. In the margins of scrolls where jokes now appear. In the way the queen pauses before replying, listening as if a pun might arrive at any moment. In the soft new laugh that rises from the queen's throat now and then, like sunlight through clouds. And sometimes, when the queen sits by the window and thinks she's alone, she'll say, "Your Majesty," to you, and smile. It starts, as most legal revolutions do, with an elephant walking into a courtroom. Not charging, not panicking, just walking in, calmly, purposefully, as if it had a very important case to make and was ready to win it. His name is Tutu. He's not a war elephant, or a ceremonial elephant, or one of the emotionally complicated ones Cleopatra prefers. Tutu is a library elephant. Yes, that's a real thing. He delivers scrolls from the eastern wing to the inner archives, has his own route, his own handler, and a fondness for sugar-dusted dates that has nearly caused 3 minor stampedes. But today, Tutu is not delivering scrolls. He is making a complaint. Or so it seems. You're already in the hall when he arrives. Technically, cats aren't allowed in courtrooms. But you have a basket under the clerk's desk. It's your favorite nap spot. Smells like parchment, pepper, and accidental power. The room falls silent as Tutu enters. He walks up to the magistrate's podium, settles down with a dramatic sigh, and places one massive foot squarely on a tablet. It cracks. The magistrate, a thin man named Senbi, adjusts his spectacles. Is that evidence? Tutu trumpets softly. Turns out, there's been an incident. A handler, new, ambitious, terrible at reading pachyderm body language, tried to redirect Tutu's route through a narrower corridor, claimed it would increase efficiency. Tutu disagreed. He refused to walk, refused to carry scrolls, refused, in fact, to acknowledge any form of labor until someone acknowledged him. And now he has walked into court. At first, everyone laughs. Then Cleopatra hears about it. And she doesn't laugh. She says, maybe he has a point. That afternoon, she calls an emergency session of the Court of Beasts. This is also real. It's an old Alexandrian tradition, mostly ceremonial, where animals are granted symbolic representation for philosophical debates. The last case involved a parrot and a stolen ruby. No one talks about it. But now it's serious. Cleopatra presides. Tutu is represented by a young archivist named Layla, who has memorized every scroll in the Ethical Animal Treatment Codex, including the footnotes. She speaks with passion. He has carried knowledge for years, never complained, never veered from his route. Now he asks for agency. Is that so strange? Opposing her is a bureaucrat named Menes, who insists loudly that this sets a dangerous precedent. Next thing you know, the cats will want voting rights. You blink at him. He looks uneasy. The trial lasts 3 days. You attend every session. So does Tutu. He stands solemnly in the back, munching on bananas and occasionally sighing. Layla presents evidence, hoofprints, eyewitness accounts, one suspiciously poetic letter written by another elephant claiming solidarity. Menes argues logistics, scroll quotas, tradition. If we allow this, he insists, we invite chaos. Cleopatra leans forward. Perhaps, she says, chaos has been waiting for an invitation. On the 4th day, the ruling is delivered. Tutu is granted symbolic autonomy. His route cannot be changed without his consent. He will continue to serve the library, but only on his terms. The court erupts in quiet applause. Menes drops his scroll. You knock it under a bench. The news spreads, not just about Tutu, but about what it means. That creatures, even those who do not speak, might still have voices. Soon, the stables form a grievance committee. The royal pigeons demand different perches. And yes, the cats meet in the Western Garden and vote unanimously to demand exactly nothing because you already do what you want. Cleopatra watches it all with a smile. This kingdom grows stranger by the day, she murmurs. Charmian replies, or truer. You curl in Cleopatra's lap and dream of tiny scrolls tied to tails. 1 week later, a goat walks into the same courtroom. Everyone groans. The magistrate sighs. Here we go again. You've never liked pilgrimages. Too many sandals, too few cushions, too much chanting before breakfast. But Cleopatra insists. She says it's tradition. She says it's political. She says the gods expect it. You suspect it's guilt. Not performative guilt, the kind that shows up in speeches and marble statues, but quiet, persistent guilt, the kind that makes a queen walk barefoot across dusty roads with a pack of scribes and no proper seating for her favorite feline. You are, of course, coming along. Not because you were invited, but because you refused to be left behind. The first day is hot. The sun presses down like a judgment. The road hums with bees, prayers, and sandal slap. You ride in a woven basket on the back of a donkey named Toddy. He resents you. You resent him. It's a dynamic that works. Cleopatra walks ahead, flanked by Charmian and 4 scribes who are already sunburned and bitter. They carry scrolls, offerings, a portable writing desk, and enough ink to stain a small god. The queen wears no crown. Just a linen robe, a pendant of Isis, and a silence heavy as armor. You nap through most of the morning. Until the blisters start. By sunset, the scribes are limping. One has developed an elaborate foot wrap system involving date leaves and prayer beads. It doesn't help. Cleopatra pretends not to notice. You do. You judge. They camp near a well with surprisingly theatrical frogs. Charmian sets up the queen's tent with practiced speed. You claim the softest corner before anyone else arrives. That night, Cleopatra dreams aloud. Do you think the gods grow tired of hearing us apologize? No one answers. Except a frog. It croaks once. You suspect it was sarcastic. The second day begins with sandals. Missing ones. The scribes blame a jackal. You suspect the donkey. Cleopatra walks barefoot. Again. Her pace is slower now. She speaks less, but when she does, it's to the villagers who gather by the roadside. She asks names, asks for stories. She blesses a baby with honey. She accepts a bundle of dried figs and doesn't complain when they taste like sadness. At midday, a boy offers her a flower. She places it behind your ear. You leave it there all afternoon. The third day brings rain. It's brief, sharp, and smells like forgotten poems. The road turns to mud. The donkey rejoices. You do not. Everything is damp, the ink bleeds, a scroll is ruined, a scribe weeps openly. The queen doesn't stop. Not when her robe tears, not when her pendant snaps, not even when a goat tries to follow the procession and steals a loaf of ceremonial bread. She walks. And you, damp, furious, noble, you walk with her. At the temple, things shift. It's old, quiet, built into the side of a hill, no guards, no pillars, just carved prayers and wind. Cleopatra kneels. No crown, no court. She places her forehead to the stone. You sit beside her. The priestess approaches. She says nothing, just lights a small fire. The queen whispers something you don't catch. The priestess nods. Then, unexpectedly, offers you a blessing too. She presses her fingers to your head and says, "For the one who remembers." You do not purr, but your tail stills. That night, the queen doesn't speak. She just writes, page after page. Not edicts, not letters. Names of every villager she met, of every child she blessed, of the goat, of the donkey, of you. At the end she adds, "Still walking," then closes the scroll. The return journey is faster, quieter. The scribes stop complaining. Charmian smiles more. The donkey stops biting things. You ride in the basket again. But this time you don't mind the bumps. Not much. Back in Alexandria, everything feels louder, brighter, shinier. The queen stands before her court and says nothing for a full minute, then simply says, "Walk with me," and walks off. Half of them follow. The rest learn to walk later. And you nap, but you remember every step, every blister, every name, and every single frog. Prince Pamine has all the charm of a damp sandal. That's the general consensus, whispered in palace corners and behind thick drapes. He is Cleopatra's second son, and though the line of succession technically favors him, on account of his Roman half-blood and general survivability, no one seems particularly thrilled about the prospect. Especially not the cats. You've observed him for years now. He pulls tails, he steps on robes, he believes figs are weapons, and that every servant is secretly a spy. Once he tried to ride an ostrich. It did not end well. Now he's 16. And suddenly, everyone's pretending he might one day be king. You notice the shift before the humans do. It's in his silence. He's stopped shouting, stopped demanding syrup with every meal, stopped setting traps for the cooks. Now he broods. He sits in the garden with unread scrolls. He stares at the moon and mutters things like legacy and destiny, and why won't they listen? You perch on a branch above him, tail dangling, and think, because you're exhausting, Pamine. But you say nothing. You're polite. Cleopatra has started including him in council meetings. Not important ones, not yet, but sessions where he can listen, nod solemnly, and pretend he understands trade routes. You attend these too. You like to knock over inkpots at strategic moments. Keeps them humble. Pamine tries to contribute. "I think we should tax sandals," he says once. "Everyone wears them. We'd be rich." Charmian gives him a look that could crack granite. He doesn't speak again for 20 minutes. Then one morning, the queen summons you both. "Walk with me," she says. Not an invitation. An order. You follow. So does Pamine, sulking behind. She leads you to the oldest part of the palace. The forgotten wing. Dusty corridors. Mosaics worn thin. A room with no ceiling, just sky. "This," she says, "is where my father taught me about rule." Pamine blinks. "Here? It used to be a library." He frowns. "It's broken." She nods, like most things we inherit. She sits. You jump into her lap. Pamine does not. She doesn't speak for a while. Then says, "Tell me what matters." He says, "Victory." She shakes her head. "Power? No." "Control? Try again." He frowns. "Bread, you meow." She laughs. "Yes, bread and memory, and knowing which one to offer first." He doesn't understand, but he's listening. That's new. Over the following weeks, Perfumed changes. Not dramatically, not into someone likable, but someone present. He visits the archives. He asks questions. He reads aloud to children in the market square badly, but with enthusiasm. He stops pulling tails. You permit him to pet you. Once. It's awkward, but sincere. Then one night he disappears. Just for an hour. Enough to panic the guards. Enough to make Cleopatra speak very softly to the stars. He returns smelling of incense and ash. He'd gone to the temple, alone. He leaves no explanation. Just a handful of wilted lotus flowers on her desk. You find a note in your basket. No name, no seal. Just one sentence. Not yet a king, but no longer just a prince. You keep it. You don't know if he wrote it, but you suspect he did. It's not his handwriting, but it smells like fig sap and hesitation. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. From then on, when he walks through the palace, the servants nod. Not out of fear, but recognition. He stops trying to be heard, and starts trying to listen. Especially to you. You still find him exhausting, but less so. And one day, when he passes you in the corridor and says nothing, just bows, you bow back. Just once. Barely. But still. It counts. The famine arrives not like thunder, but like dust. It whispers first in the outer villages. Farmers report failed harvests. Wells run dry. The date trees fruit too early, then collapse. No one panics, at least not yet. Egypt has seen droughts before. The Nile is generous, even in her silence. But when 3 barges of grain arrive half-empty, and the palace baker starts adding powdered reeds to the bread, Cleopatra understands this is no seasonal whim. This is a reckoning. And you're chewing on a papyrus wrapper that once held dried sardines. You're not starving, but even you can feel the hunger in the walls. Cleopatra acts quickly. She calls a council. Scribes, priests, grain lords, the cook. You attend too, seated atop a rolled map of the Nile basin. We need water, she says. More than offerings, more than prayers, we need action. Charmian suggests a river reroute. The chief priest insists on building a new shrine to Hapi, god of the flood. The cook quietly suggests sacrificing fewer goats and more paperwork. Everyone speaks. You knock a cup over. It spills into the irrigation plans. The queen laughs. Tidy metaphors, she says. Now let's try real ones. The solution is strange. She calls it the cow network. You're not sure if that's literal or just a catchy name. It involves turning the royal cattle, yes, the sacred pampered perfumed cows, into portable reservoirs. They're fitted with ceramic barrels strapped gently to their flanks. A special saddlebag system, designed by a local inventor named Nessos, allows them to carry water from temple wells to outlying farms. It's absurd. And brilliant. And it works. Mostly. The cows hate it. They protest, they sit, they develop a union. You observe their meetings from a nearby fig tree. Eventually, Cleopatra agrees to daily massages and extra beet pulp. The cows resume work. Slowly. Grudgingly. But the water flows. You're assigned to oversee the central station, a shady courtyard where cows are loaded, blessed, and occasionally serenaded by a flute player who believes music calms their udders. You find the shade agreeable, the company less so, but you endure. You always do. One morning, a courier arrives from the northern fields. He's thin, his robe is torn. He falls at Cleopatra's feet, holding a small bowl. Inside, a single grain of wheat. He says, "The first in 4 months." Everyone stares. The queen nods, takes the grain, places it on her tongue, closes her eyes, then says, "Build more barrels." Meanwhile, in the palace, things change. Banquets shrink. Fruit disappears. The royal garden is transformed into a vegetable plot. You patrol it daily. Once, you chase a pigeon away from the leeks. You are applauded. A statue is proposed. You decline. The city adjusts. People share more, pray less, work longer. The fountains run lower, but they run, and through it all, the cows march. Blessed, watered, adored. One even becomes a minor celebrity. Her name is Hecate. She's featured in 2 poems and a short play. She gives interviews. You suspect she's exaggerating. But fame changes everyone. At the famine's peak, Cleopatra walks barefoot into the market square. No guards, no ceremony. She buys a small melon, splits it, eats half, gives the rest to a child. You see it from a rooftop. You do not forget. Eventually, the rains return. Quietly. Without warning. The Nile swells, the fields green. The cows are retired. Hecate gets a mural. The queen plants a tree. You nap beneath it. The bark smells like pepper and patience. The famine is over, but the memory remains. In the water barrels, in the garden rows, and in one small papyrus scroll the queen places on your pillow one night. It reads, "For every paw print beside a bucket, thank you. You chew the corner, but only a little. There is a garden behind the palace that nobody talks about. Not because it's secret, everyone knows it's there, but because it's not official. It's not on the maps, not in the ceremonies. No tours go there. Even the court poets ignore it, which is a feat in itself. They call it the Garden of Regrets. You've been visiting it for years. It's quiet, shaded, overgrown in all the right places. The paths curve like questions, and the air smells of figs, thyme, and old wishes. Cleopatra planted it herself. Not with attendants, not with fanfare, just her hands, a shovel, and a silence that grew deeper than the roots. It started after the first campaign. She returned from the eastern border with dirt on her sandals and a crease in her forehead that never quite left. She didn't speak of what happened, just asked for seeds, lentils mostly, and sycamores. She dug in the early hours when the city was still fogged and dreaming. You were the first to follow her there. You remember the first planting, her kneeling in the loose soil, fingers trembling, whispering something you couldn't hear. You sat beside a pile of compost and watched the sun rise through the thorns. A tree was born that day. She named it Hesed, mercy. Now every tree has a name. Some you recognize, places, faces, mistakes. One is named after a general who disobeyed an order and died saving a village. One is named after a boy who drew pictures in the sand and never learned to read. One, a small lemon tree, is simply called If. The queen never explains the names, but she remembers them all. You do too. She visits more often now. Sometimes with a scroll, sometimes with a basket of cuttings, sometimes with just that same silence she wore like a second skin. She doesn't always plant. Sometimes she just sits. Sometimes she cries. Never loud. Just enough to dampen the bark. You never leave her alone there. Not in the garden of regrets. One day a new tree arrives. Different. Dark-leafed, spiral-barked. She plants it slowly, carefully. At its base she places 3 objects: a piece of broken pottery, a string of onyx beads, and a scroll sealed in wax. You sniff it. It smells like endings. She names the tree again, and walks away. The garden grows. A network of shade and shadow. Winding paths, cracked benches, tiny altars of stone and coin. The scribes pretend not to know it exists. The priests claim it's improper. The palace gardener thinks it's cursed. But people come. Not many. And never in groups. A general left a ribbon once. A cook buried a spoon. A child once wandered in, fell asleep under a fig tree, and dreamed of his mother's laugh. You were there. You saw him smile in his sleep. Cleopatra begins bringing saplings from her travels. Olives from the hills. Lotus bulbs from a dying pond. One day, she returns with a tiny thorn bush from the southern border. It's brittle, sharp, unfriendly. She names it Should, and waters it with wine. One afternoon, she sits on the low bench beside you. Sighs. I'm running out of space, she says. You glance around. There is space. But you understand. It's not about land. It's about memory. So she starts planting less, and tending more. She trims. She murmurs. She listens. And sometimes she just breathes. You do too. In the garden, the air always smells like honesty. Eventually, people begin leaving notes. Tied to branches. Buried under rocks. Folded into seed pods. She never reads them aloud. But you've seen her smile at one. You've also seen her burn one. That's how it works. Regret is not tidy, but it is green. One evening, you find her asleep beneath the fig tree named Even So. You curl beside her, tail tucked, heart soft. Above you, leaves murmur in languages older than papyrus. And all around, the garden sighs, not with sorrow, but with memory, with mercy, and with the quiet, growing hope that maybe tomorrow needs fewer trees. The monk arrives barefoot, carrying nothing but a bundle of herbs and a reed mat. No sandals, no satchel, no scrolls, just 2 palms and a back curved by time, not from age, but from bowing to things most people pretend not to see. His name is Sinu. He refuses to enter through the palace gates. Instead, he waits outside beside the fig vendor, sharing bread with a dog that only limps when it's being watched. The guards report his presence with the urgency one might apply to a stray papyrus. The court scoffs, the priests shrug. Cleopatra says, "Let him in." You see him before she does. He walks without rhythm, like a river that forgot what rushing feels like. He smells of wood smoke and unfamiliar flowers. You circle him once. He nods, then says, "Still carrying the moon on your shoulders, I see." You blink. He chuckles. It's not a sound, more like a breeze catching a smile. They meet in the old library wing, the one with no roof. He bows deeply, palms open. Cleopatra offers him a cushion. He chooses the floor. Charmian raises an eyebrow. The queen smiles faintly. "Welcome," she says. "I was invited," he replies, "by the weight of your silence." He stays for 1 week. No more. Each morning, he walks the garden paths barefoot. Each night, he sits beneath the temple of Hathor and listens to the stones. He eats what's given, sleeps where invited, and speaks only when someone truly asks. It drives the palace mad. The scribes are offended, the philosophers intrigued, the cooks confused, the guards suspicious. You nap beside him daily. You've never known such stillness. One evening, Cleopatra joins him at the temple steps. They sit together, watching the city's lights ripple on the harbor. She asks, "Do you believe in gods?" He replies, "I believe in questions that echo." She nods, then asks, "Am I a good queen?" He closes his eyes. "You are trying." She doesn't speak again that night, but she stays until the stars forget to twinkle. He speaks once to the court, briefly, a summoned session, an audience of skeptics. He stands, places one hand on his heart, and says, "Your palace is built of marble, but your kingdom, paper, fire, and breath." Then bows and leaves. Someone tries to argue, but no one remembers the point they were going to make. On his last day, he does something unusual. He refuses his morning tea. Instead, he walks slowly, intentionally, to Cleopatra's chamber. She greets him without surprise. They speak for an hour. No one is allowed inside. You guard the door. A beetle tries to eavesdrop. You flick it away. When he leaves, he carries only one thing, a small scroll, unmarked. He tucks it behind his belt and walks barefoot down the palace steps. You watch from the roof tiles. He does not look back. That night, Cleopatra finds a sandal under her chair. Old, worn, cracked. It's his. He left it behind. No note. No reason. Just a shape in the dust. She places it beside her bed. Says, "Let me carry your silence." Later, you find the reed mat still in the garden. You lie on it. It smells like ash and peace. You close your eyes, and for one moment, you don't hear the scribes, or the merchants, or the Rome-ward winds. Just your breath, and hers, and the memory of a man who brought no teachings, only presence. The elephant's name is Dedi, and he hums lullabies. You discover this by accident, curled beneath a jacaranda tree in the royal courtyard one restless night. The moon is low, the breeze smells of milk and old scrolls, and from the direction of the animal enclosure, you hear it, a low, rhythmic rumble, soft and oddly soothing, like someone humming through a barrel. You follow the sound. It leads to Dedi. He's not a war elephant, not ceremonial, not even part of the cow network. He's old. His skin is wrinkled, his tusks yellowed, and his legs creak when he shifts. No one remembers where he came from. He arrived at the palace 3 rulers ago and simply never left. He's known as the Quiet One. You discover he is not quiet at all. He just speaks in lullabies. Cleopatra doesn't believe you at first. An elephant that sings? You flick your tail. She raises an eyebrow. Did you dream it? You take her there the next night. And wait. Nothing. Dedi stares at her. She stares back. He trumpets once, softly, and begins eating a fig branch. She shakes her head. You tricked me into a midnight walk. You do not blink. 3 nights later, she returns on her own and hears him. It becomes a ritual. Late evenings. No court, no scribes, no decisions. Just Cleopatra, you, and the elephant that hums lullabies to the moon. Sometimes she brings a cushion. Sometimes she brings regrets. Sometimes she hums back. The caretakers say he does this often. To the calves. To the stars. To himself. They never knew anyone else could hear it. It's just vibrations, one insists. He's old, his bones echo. The queen disagrees. Bones don't sing in tune. One morning, a child visits the palace, one of the river orphans. The queen funds quietly. He's frightened. Of the guards. Of the size. Of everything. Until he meets Dedi. The elephant hums. The child stops crying. Falls asleep with his head against the giant leg. A scribe sees it, writes a poem. A guard carves the scene onto a water jug. And the next day, there's a line of sick children waiting by the enclosure. Dedi hums to them all. It becomes official. Elephant whispering sessions. The court rolls its eyes. The queen adds them to the calendar. You attend every one. Sometimes curled on a nursemaid's lap. Sometimes tucked beside a sleeping child. Always listening. Because the lullaby changes. Each time. Sometimes it's soft and slow, like wind through reeds. Sometimes it's low and rolling, like the sea remembering something. And once, just once, it sounded like Cleopatra's lullaby from when she was a child. She didn't speak for an hour after. Then, one morning, Dedi doesn't hum. He doesn't eat. He doesn't rise. He simply breathes. Slow, steady, quiet. The caretakers say he's old. Very old. The queen visits. She kneels beside him, places her forehead to his, and says, "You can go if you want." You sit beside them, tail still, heart heavy. At dusk, he hums one last time, just a single note. Long, low, final, then silence. They bury him beneath the jacaranda tree. The children bring flowers. One brings a mango. Another hums. You stay until moonrise. Then return to your basket and dream of low vibrations, of fig trees, of lullabies sung by creatures with long memories, and soft endings. The nightmares begin the same night as the comet. Cleopatra doesn't sleep. You know because you don't either. She lies still, eyes open, barely breathing, while the stars blink warily through the window slats. Outside, Alexandria is quiet, too quiet. Not the usual hush of midnight scholars or fishmongers finishing their last bottles. This is the kind of quiet that tilts. She whispers, "It's coming." You blink in the dark. She doesn't mean the comet. It appeared above the harbor just after sunset, a great, hairy flame, tail stretched across the sky like a whip. The priests panicked. The astronomers squinted. A young courier vomited on the temple stairs. You watched it from the roof. It looked bored. Still, people started dreaming strange things. Even the cats. Your dreams are full of milk that curdles when touched. Scrolls that whisper names you don't know. The queen, walking backward through a garden made of feathers. When you wake, your claws are dug into a cushion. You never do that. Cleopatra won't eat. She picks at olives, sips at honey water, stares at her reflection as if waiting for it to blink first. Charmian tries everything: spiced dates, apricot tarts, even that ridiculous cinnamon honey coconut thing the cook swears by. Nothing. The queen says her mouth tastes of rust. You taste it too. The city starts misbehaving. Fountains stop flowing. 3 statues cry oil. A camel refuses to face west. The royal parrots speak only in rhymes, bad ones. Someone finds a fish with 2 eyes on the same side of its head. A goat walks into the court and declares she must choose, then leaves. No one saw it arrive. The priests declare a 9-day fast. The astronomers try to measure the comet's arc using melted wax and guesswork. You find a frog inside the queen's sandal. It stares at you. You stare back. Neither of you wins. On the fifth night, Cleopatra dreams aloud. You lie beside her, she mumbles names. Not titles, not generals. Just names. Anan, Petra, Sephet. You don't know them. She wakes suddenly. Her eyes wide. We didn't build the ladder, she says. Then rolls over and weeps. You visit the temple that morning. On your own. No guards, no servants. You walk the columns, feel the old stone beneath your paws, sit before the altar of Ma and watch dust float like slow birds. A priestess offers you cream. You sniff it. Then nudge it over. She nods. Then says balance must be made. You purr once. Then leave. When you return, Cleopatra is in the garden. Not the usual one. The first one. The one with the tree called Hesed. She kneels. And she speaks to the tree. You sit beside her. She doesn't look at you. But she says, I made promises I can't keep. The tree does not respond. But a leaf falls. Right between you. That night, she eats a peach. One bite. Then two. She smiles, just a little. Says, the rust is gone. You nod. Even though it isn't. Not completely. But the comet fades. Slowly. Night by night. And with it, the dreams. Mostly. 2 days later, she wakes before dawn. Hums a lullaby you've never heard. Sips her tea. Stretches. Then says, we have work to do. And you follow. Because the nightmares may return. But so will the mornings. And you intend to be there for both. The mango tree has always leaned. It's not a dramatic lean, nothing that requires ropes or supports, but a subtle tilt, as if it's straining toward something unseen. The gardeners mutter about poor soil, about uneven sunlight, about those cursed cats always rubbing against the roots. But you know the truth. It leans, because that's where Cleopatra always sits. And this morning, for the first time in many days, she's sitting there again. Alone. No scribes. No guards. No scrolls. Just a plain linen robe, a piece of bread, and the wind ruffling her hair like an affectionate ghost. You hop onto the bench beside her. She doesn't flinch. This has always been her favorite tree. It's crooked, persistent, produces fruit too early, too often, and always a little sour. She once called it the royal disappointment. Then added, which is why I love it. You were there, the day it was planted. A gift from a village elder, carried in a clay pot, roots bound with string and a coin for luck. She dug the hole herself, wore gloves, sweated through her robe, swore twice when a beetle crawled up her sleeve. You batted the coin. She buried it. Now the tree is tall, lopsided, and, for some reason, comforting. She's quiet today. More than usual. Not the heavy silence of grief. Not the focused silence of planning. This is light. Loose. Like a basket emptied at the end of a harvest. She breaks the bread. Offers you a piece. You sniff it. Accept. The crumbs fall into the grass like soft punctuation. She exhales. And says, I think I'm done trying to prove anything. You flick your tail. Not in disagreement. Just acknowledgement. She starts talking. Not to you, not really, just out. To the tree. To the sky. To memory. She speaks of Rome, how it looms, how it pulls, how its people smell like vinegar and urgency. She speaks of Pamine, how he's grown quieter, how he frowns with purpose now, how he's stopped throwing olives. She speaks of Sapphira, of Dedi, of the sandals still tucked under her bed. She does not cry. but her voice thickens like river mud. And when the breeze picks up, you pretend it's why your eyes water. A mango falls. Soft thud. She picks it up. It's small, bruised. She presses it to her nose, inhales, then places it beside you. For the archives, she says. You bat it once. Just to be sure. The sun shifts. A shadow crosses the garden. It's Charmian. She stands a few paces back, silent, then steps forward. Hands Cleopatra a small scroll. No seal. Just a ribbon. The queen reads it, smiles, then says, "Tell them I'll come tomorrow. Today I walk." Charmian nods, leaves. You both sit for a while longer. The wind rustles the mango leaves. Somewhere, a fountain burbles unevenly. A dove lands, then immediately regrets it. The queen laughs, genuinely. Soft, round, like a bell with nothing to prove. She looks at you. Do you think the tree will miss me? You stare, then jump into her lap. She takes that as a yes. Later, she walks through the palace. Slowly, one hallway at a time, touches the stone walls, the banister with the missing jewel, the spot where she once spilled wine and claimed it was a prophecy. You follow, step by step. She doesn't say goodbye, not to the rooms, not to the staff, not even to the throne. She just nods, as if saying, "We've had our time." That night, she sleeps beneath the mango tree. No guards, no lanterns, just a blanket. And you, curled beside her. The tree leans further, protective, patient. And in the stillness before dawn, you feel it. Not an ending. Not yet. Just a soft closing, like a scroll tied with ribbon. Waiting. The wind today smells like salt and ink. It curls through the palace like a storyteller, stirring curtains, rattling reed blinds, slipping through the library doors with a mischievous whisper. It touches everything and everyone, but the queen most of all. She's awake before dawn, not out of urgency, not fear, just readiness. You follow her through the quiet, down the garden path, past the mosaic of the stars, to the pillar court. They're all there, the edicts, the names, the lines carved into limestone and memory. She runs a hand across one. If you are kind, write it down. Another, bread and dignity are the same word in older tongues. And another, your favorite, the cat remembers. She smiles, not because she's proud, but because she did what she could. And now it's time. The palace doesn't know yet. Not officially, but it feels it. Scribes work slower. The kitchens are quiet. The fountain near the owl statue weeps a little more than usual. Pamin doesn't speak. He just watches, from a balcony, holding a scroll he hasn't opened. Not yet. You walk beside her, not ahead, not behind. Together. Through every hall, every step an echo, every turn a memory. The staircase where she once fell asleep after reading all night. The alcove where Sapphira made her laugh so hard she choked on a grape. The corridor where she first learned Rome could be both a place and a warning. She touches them all, not like a queen, like someone remembering her house before moving out. At the Garden of Regrets, she kneels one last time. No planting today, just stillness. You sit beside her, tail curled, eyes soft. She breathes in, and then out, says, there is nothing left I wish to undo. At twilight she eats. Rice. Just rice. No sauces. No tarts. No ceremony. She invites no one. Except you. She offers a spoonful. You decline. She nods. The bowl is empty before moonrise. She writes that night. One final scroll. Short. To Pamine. You see only the title, Begin Here. She leaves it beside his bed. Then walks alone to the tower of the sea. You're already waiting for her. The wind stronger now. The stars brighter. Alexandria below, breathing. She sits. Not dramatically. Not ceremonially. Just sits. You climb into her lap. She strokes your fur. Then whispers, I am not afraid. Her last breath is soft. Like a tide. Like a lullaby. Like something setting down a crown. You stay until morning. Then longer. Then longer still. They find you together. Still. Serene. Sunlight kissing her hair. Your paw resting on her hand. No drama. Just peace. They carry her gently. Not as a queen, but as a woman who once ruled with ink and fig branches and the occasional very sharp word. You walk beside the procession, then vanish before the tomb is sealed. As agreed. Years pass. The garden grows. The pillars fade. Pamine rules not like her, but not unlike her either. He never replaces the mango tree. Never re-engraves the cat remembers line. Never stops visiting the room with the reed mat. And you linger, as cats do, watching, guarding, dreaming, sometimes as a shadow, sometimes as a memory, sometimes as a low purr in a quiet hallway. And one night, long after scrolls have crumbled and thrones have changed names, someone sits beneath a tree, feels a weightless warmth, and hears a purr, and knows somehow she was real, and she was kind, and a cat still remembers. And now, as your breath slows, imagine the palace at night, empty halls kissed by moonlight, curtains swaying in rhythm with the sea, a garden of regrets humming softly in the breeze, the queen at rest, the cat nearby, nothing left to say, nothing left to fix, only memories now woven gently into stone, into trees, into stories whispered just before sleep. So let your shoulders fall, let the quiet in, let your heartbeat match the wind, and drift, like a mango leaf, across a still pond, into the soft, warm dark,